All right. CEOs across industries are warning that AI is eliminating early career jobs that once served as stepping stones for young professionals, threatening skill building and raising concerns about long-term leadership development. To discuss the future of professional services and the vanishing rungs of the career ladder, please welcome Workday GM of ASEAN, Jess O'Reilly, Indeed VP of Engineering, Madhu Kurup, Singapore Management University VP and Lee Kong Chian Professor Sun Sun Lim, LinkedIn APAC Head Economist Pei-Ying Chua, and Fortune's Jeremy Kahn.
Great, thanks for everybody for being here. As Andrew said, there's some certainly anecdotal evidence that we're starting to see AI displacing entry-level roles and perhaps leading to increased unemployment among young people and recent graduates. Pei-Ying, I want to go to you first. What evidence that you look at? You have a lot of data at LinkedIn. Are you seeing any evidence that this might be the case? Again, a lot of what we're hearing is sort of anecdotal, that it's getting a lot harder for young people to find, and young graduates in particular, to find jobs. But is there any evidence that that's actually the case from the data you're looking at?
Yeah, thanks, and that's a great question. I get it a lot. I think the first thing that we want to talk about is not about how jobs are being taken away or jobs are being removed, but more importantly that AI itself is fundamentally changing the structure of the workforce. But change is not new in the workforce. Change is not new in the economy. We've had many instances of economic change in the past. We've had the digital revolution in the past 1 or 2 decades, and change is constant. So it's not that AI is the first change that the world or the labor market has ever seen. It will certainly not be the last change. Now, right now, in the economy, we are seeing that AI is a structural change, meaning that it is fundamentally shifting the skills that are needed, shifting the roles. And a lot of the shift does come from certain tasks that are done by entry-level workers, because these tasks tend to be more routine and more repetitive, and therefore easier to automate. But what we do here, what I hear a lot from people that I engage with the ground, and what I see a lot in our data as well, is that the change of these jobs, the change in the skills of these jobs, is constant. And for the entry-level workers, this presents the opportunity for them to up-level themselves and to work on a different set of skills, to build human-centric skills, to build agility and creativity, and it gives them the space to do so now.
Right, interesting. And you were telling me a little bit backstage that there does seem to be this sort of intensification of competition for each open role. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And do you think that AI is playing a role in that kind of intensification of competition for roles?
Okay, so there are 2 forces in the economy right now. One is cyclical, that's the business cycle. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. That's just how the economy and how the business cycles work. Now, the second force now is AI. It's a structural force. It's creating a long-lasting, long-run change. So it happens that right now, these 2 forces are coming together. We are at the point where the economy was at a bottom about a year ago, and it's slowly starting to improve. And then AI comes and changes the nature of a lot of these roles. So these 2 forces together do have a slightly larger effect in totality, but in the long run, it will transform the jobs and it will elevate the way in which we work.
Interesting. I recently spoke with Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. He has said recently that 30 to 50% of tasks within Salesforce are now being done by AI, and yet at the same time, he does not believe that there's going to be this huge technological unemployment, that 50% of white-collar workers are going to be out of work, which is interesting. And but you hear other people say there is going to be this huge job collapse in white-collar work. Jess, maybe we can go to you. What's your view on this? Do you think we're heading towards this huge technological unemployment, or do you think, yes, things are being automated, but people are going to find new roles, and we're going to be able to kind of reconfigure the workforce for this new era?
I think I agree completely with Mark. He's a wise man. And I think a lot of this, all of you would agree, I am a leader. I am constantly short of talent. And when I meet with my customers across the region here in ASEAN, we've got all of these really interesting forces, as you say. We've got aging economies, or aging populations. We've got skills shortages. We all understand these different forces. So every single conversation I'm having is less about jobs with, there's going to be so many people looking for jobs. But what we're really trying to talk and partner with our customers about is how do we find the right skills and match them? And that's often a reskilling agenda, because we've got this very big recognition that there's a lot of talent within the organization. But as you said, our organization is shifting in where that talent is. In fact, I was in Thailand a couple of weeks back with a bank, huge bank, and they're really looking at their 10-year strategy and saying, we don't even know if our people are going to have a traditional full-time job anymore. We've got this idea that they're going to build a backbone of skills economy within their bank. And every single project or initiative is going to be almost created like a gig project. And what I loved about the way they're creating these gigs is there's almost like a proportion of, we want absolute skills to be in this gig, but we want to allow space for a new person to reskill into this group. So 1% of the group that we create around this project would be a reskill, where they're raising their hand to say, I don't have the skills here, but I've got edge skills or adjacent skills that would be able to do this so that they can reskill. So I'm loving the idea of this future of not looking at the vastness, but looking at the opportunity ahead and saying to us as organizations, how do we use technology and AI to be the backbone of how we identify and match both the skills we have and the projects we have, but then also give that balance of saying within a project or a gig, how do we give the space for a reskill opportunity, or even to the question you asked, how do we make sure we get a new entrant to the workforce in that gig so that we can lift up from that perspective as well. So I look at it more with excitement than I do with fear.
Yeah. Madhu, how are you? What are you seeing, and are you worried about kind of technological unemployment coming?
Yeah, I would echo the comments. There's a quote that I heard first from our chief economist, Svenja, that basically said, AI is not going to take your job. The person next to you who's clever and using AI is going to take your job, right? And the thesis here really is, if you think about technology disruptions, like one of my favorite examples is like email came in and sort of changed fax machines and sort of got rid of the industry. But with generative AI in particular, the disruptor is the one that people can use to help themselves with the disruption, right? There's also something that Svenja has talked about before. And so if you are able to understand the new tools that exist and you make yourself more productive and you sort of learn to ride the wave rather than being worried about the wave, I think that's really going to make a big difference. It goes to the point of upskilling that was previously mentioned, but fundamentally, using the tools can make people much more productive, and that's the pattern I've been seeing.
Yeah. Sun, I wanted to ask you, are we seeing a disruption of the traditional career ladder, particularly within professions, in part because of AI? And if so, what model are firms moving to? Because you're still going to need new talent coming into these organizations, maybe not in the same numbers as before, but you're still going to have young people come into the firms. How are they looking at changing that talent pipeline, that training pipeline?
So when you look at universities being the crucible of talent, we do a lot of talent development, obviously, and we don't do it sort of in isolation, right? It's not an academic exercise. We realize that our students are going to graduate into very diverse industries that are going to be rapidly evolving. So there's a lot of consultation that we undertake with industry partners. We develop programs like work-study degrees. We also develop, for example, experiential learning, where they partner with industry clients, and they get that sense of what it's like to work in the real world. And I think these are very nicely integrated into sort of new career ladders, where students can actually undertake, for example, internships that then transition into long-term work. But fundamentally also, we need to think of the world as changing quite significantly in terms of our longevity. So we're looking at what we call the 100-year life. And if you're going to have a 100-year life and you're going to no longer have a career for life, but a lifetime of careers, it's really important that universities as well as organizations come in with that capacity to support their employees as they transition through different kinds of roles. So you were talking about the difference in the career ladder. I think quite apart from building internships more thoughtfully into the career, but also at the same time more work-study integration, and then also to have a lot of on-the-job training, a lot of on-the-job adaptation, on-the-job reinvention. So it's really a coordinated effort between universities as well as employers to create that new career path.
Interesting. And how is it changing the way universities think about, courses and how you teach students and what you teach students? And it's interesting because there's this contradiction, I think, sometimes, because a lot of times industry will complain about academia. Oh, you don't teach people the skills they really need for the workplace. It should be much more vocationally focused. You need to be much more focused on what people are actually going to be doing when they get out into work. Not so academic, not so ivory tower. Yeah. And yet, when work is actually changing so rapidly, and it seems like a lot of the skills that people are actually going to need are these general skills, this, resilience, curiosity, how to do research of all kinds, be a lifelong learner. How do you reconcile those two things within the university context?
So I would say that it's very difficult. I've been in 3 different universities, and I can tell you ivory tower is not a term you can use on us. We've been very proactive about reaching out to industry partners. We wouldn't get away with, just putting up the same old curriculum all the time. We also very actively solicit the participation of industry partners on our advisory councils for each of our schools. And I think this very dynamic consultation is what enables us to bring theory to the table, but also to integrate it very well to practice. So with regard to students, I would say you're right, the core skills around resilience are really important, but also precisely because there is going to be so much automation, we are creating learning opportunities that allow our students to sharpen their communication skills, collaboration skills, and most importantly, critical thinking. Because even as the generative AI tools get improved, we're also seeing where they might have gaps, we're seeing their deficits, and we need our students to be able to use them cleverly, smartly, so that they can critically examine whether the outputs are exactly what they want. So experiential learning modules, I think, are really important at my university. We also mandate 100% internship as a graduation requirement and 100% overseas exposure as a graduation requirement. So that takes you out of the country, throws you in the deep end. You've got to understand a whole new culture, a whole new economy, a whole new set of norms. And I think these are really the kinds of educational experiences that really fortify students' capacity to adapt to the future.
Interesting. Jess, I wanted to ask you, you talked a little bit about maybe moving to a kind of almost gig worker model within companies. People will be assembled specifically for a particular project, but they might not be with that team long term. They might just do that project together, and then they're going to go separate ways onto different projects. Do you also see any companies returning to kind of maybe a classic apprenticeship model, where as opposed to bringing in maybe a huge class of junior analysts in a bank that you're going to throw on due diligence for deals or something, instead you hire a selective number of graduates, and you really have them mentored very closely by a senior banker or something, where they're really sort of learning at the elbow of that person over a several-year period of time. I wonder about that. I think that's one model you might see, but I don't know if you're seeing any evidence that people are trying that or thinking about that.
I think it's going to be a blend of both, that traditional model of the by the hip or by the shoulder and more of these gigs coming together. In fact, I was with one of our customers, Sanofi, a biopharma, very well-known global company, and they talk about using Workday like Tinder internally, where it's like, how do we get projects and initiatives and match that with the right skills? And that is not just at the executive level, but all the way through the ranks, including the graduates. So I see this interesting opportunity to create marketplaces where we're giving a lot more diverse experience based on technology helping to match skills with projects as well. But I think there's never going to be able to replace an executive being able to give that experience to an apprentice. So I'd like to think we create these in a bit of a combo of both.
Right, interesting. Pei, I want to talk to you about LinkedIn. I know you guys are starting to use AI a bit, and we'll go to Madhu also, because I know you're both doing this, where you're using AI to help job candidates maybe find roles, and also to help companies find candidates. Does AI have some role to play here as a kind of matchmaker, and helping people think about their own abilities in terms of skills as opposed to career, or job? What are you guys doing in that regard?
So we have a lot of tools at LinkedIn. Many of them are AI-driven, AI-powered, and these tools are aimed to help all of our users, be it businesses or members or professionals. They are aimed to help them find their next opportunity, or to build or to grow. So for example, we have AI-powered hiring assistant that helps hiring managers to post job descriptions that are more accurate, and therefore helps job seekers, because when job descriptions are more accurate, job seekers can then apply for those jobs with more confidence. Another thing that I've started to see in the data is around the use of AI and around this concept that we call AI literacy. I think we've spoken about it a bit on this panel, right? It's about AI is a tool, but the key transformational moment isn't about the tool itself. It's about how everyone uses the tool. And on our side, when we looked at the data, we see that AI literacy amongst professionals in Asia has grown by 3 times in the past year. So that tells us something. It tells us that the adoption of AI tools is growing. It's gaining traction. Now, not everybody needs to be an expert in building AI tools, but everyone needs to know how to use AI. And we're starting to see that really shine through in the data.
Interesting. Madhu, what are you seeing at Indeed?
Yeah, sometimes people conflate Gen AI with AI, and that's sometimes a misconception, because if you look at classic personalization or recommendation systems, Indeed's been using them and pioneering their use for two-sided marketplace matching for many, many years. Even simple things like search, which all of us take for granted, is actually pretty complicated examples of sort of information retrieval and AI there. But we have been building some generative AI tooling as well. We also have the ability for employers to get help from generative AI to sort of help craft the best job description. But in terms of recommendation systems and in terms of helping people find their potential career, there are now some agents that you can chat with and have a conversation with that can give you some guidance and some ways of thinking about it. But the high-level way I would look at it is we've been in the universe of using AI to help connect job seekers and help people find jobs for such a long time that we've kind of taken it for granted. It's like breathing for us, right? It's just that the rest of the world being exposed to that box that you could talk to has suddenly made it seem like that's the only expression of AI.
Right.
But there's a lot of use of AI in all kinds of simple things and all kinds of day-to-day usage, which is, hey, if one of my favorite examples of this is the word nonprofit, right? Turns out you can write it as nonprofit, non-dash profit, and non-space profit, right? But when you type in a search, you want the results irrespective of what the employer is thinking.
Right.
You want to do the best thing for the job seeker. And now that's simple. That's a statistical correlation that you can do from any kind of collaborative filtering algorithm. But that is also AI. And so there's a lot of use of it. We've been using it for a long time, and we're going to continue to do it.
Interesting. There's some talk about this kind of cat and mouse game developing, where you have a lot of the job applicants are using AI to write their resumes, to find jobs to apply to, and they're applying to many more positions potentially than in the past, because it's super easy. You can get AI to generate the cover letter for you. You can get it to tailor your resume with no effort. And at the same time, then there's this flood of candidates. So all the companies are increasingly using AI to screen those candidates and filter them, and that's even creeping like further into the process. So a lot of the technical interviews or tests that used to be human administered are now administered by AI, and you have a lot of job candidates complaining that, oh, I never even got to really make my case to a person. I went through 3 rounds with this company. I never met a single employee. It was all AI. So which is frustrating for people. Maybe Jess, and we can go down the line. What are you seeing in that regard? Are we just going to see that process continue? Is it, is this a problem actually for, something kind of broken here in this attempt to match candidates with jobs?
Yeah, I think Marty said it really well backstage. It's like a hiring process becomes an LLM talking to an LLM essentially, and yeah, that's not going to get us anywhere. I think at Workday we're really trying to solve for this because we're right in the intersection, right? Customers are using us both to be able to post the right job applicants and then manage that process from hiring all the way through to retiring. And so I think it is really a blend of, and I'm sorry, but we're going to repeat this constantly in this forum, right? It has to be a blend of human and AI. We all know that. I think you said it eloquently, like you've got to teach your students how to pick up where AI doesn't grab it. And so a lot of the customers we're working with are really trying to make sure that the tool flows and the processes that the technology provides, whilst it can make you smarter and faster with some level of AI analysis, there is still definitely a human that has to be in the loop. And I hope that prevails for quite a long time because I think that in hiring, a lot of it is about chemistry and it's about the softer skills, not just the skills. In saying that as well, though, I will just add, there is a big shift that I'm seeing in a lot of the customers across ASEAN specifically around moving to a very big skills-based, not just about the credentials of where they've studied or where they've worked, but how does an applicant really surface their skills and how does technology help to make that accurate as far as how we not only hire people, but then how we progress them through their experience in the organization. That then links to the gigs and projects as well. So yeah, I think human and AI still have to prevail, which I think we all agree with. But I think technology and skills has to become the backbone of a lot of that as well.
Yeah, do you have to change your process, Madhu? I mean, I've heard some people even say, oh, the technical interview is dead now because everyone's just, if you're trying to hire a programmer or something, because everyone just uses ChatGPT to answer the questions. So you can't really tell anything anymore.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting element here, which is often interviews and other things are methods of verification of memorization. Do you know this particular syntax, or do you know this particular use of this language? And that may be less interesting in the future because in some sense you have this perfect, I think someone else said it, very interesting intern who's at your shoulder, who's willing to do a lot of work for you, but the intern may be drunk and occasionally may say something completely ridiculous, right? And so what will become soon very important is your ability to verify the output and to validate the output, right? For some time, sometime like maybe 6 months, prompt engineer was a big deal, right? And now prompt engineers have gone away because there's now a realization that whether we like it or not, we're all prompt engineers. And so if you look at it and said, maybe 10 years ago, that there was some people who were really skilled with email. Now email sort of default for all of us, right? And so in some sense, that evolution is going to happen where the future of how you validate someone's ability is by either skills-based or by experiential, as both my panelists have said, or other ways of demonstrating your capability to sort of show your quality and to verify quality. Because if an LLM tells you something and you can recognize very quickly that that's a ridiculous result, you're now super valuable in the organization, right? And you are the kind of person that the organization wants to continue to grow because you got to remember, there's a quote I think I've heard from OpenAI, but I've heard from other people as well. The best model you're using today is the worst model you're going to use for the rest of your life, right? And I really couldn't deal with that until I thought about phones, because whatever the best phone you bought right now is literally the worst phone you're going to use in the rest of your life. And so as the models keep getting better, your ability to judge the output of the models and verify that it is good, that's going to be the long-term skill that's going to retain and sort of really help you succeed.
Pei, what about you? What are you guys seeing at LinkedIn? How are you dealing with this idea of, just the number of jobs people are applying for has grown up, exploded, but then companies are overwhelmed with candidates and have no way to sort through them?
So we've got tools, again, hiring tools, assistants that help to sort through some of these applications, look for certain signals, and all of that. But I think more importantly, when we think about how do we hire someone, or how does a hiring manager hire, it's not just about the hiring. Hiring is just one event in a very, very long career. You have to think about progression, you have to think about learning, you have to think about how do you groom this person, what are you going to do with them across their entire journey. And that's why I think, for me, what is very important is that whether you're a company, whether you're an educator, whether you're a government, the important thing is you protect the worker, you protect the talent. You don't protect the job itself, because the job is going to change. I have data going back 20 years that says that 1 in 5 people who are hired today, they are being hired into jobs that didn't exist 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was no job called social media manager. Now it's so common. I think all of us know a social media manager or someone who works in that space. So really, I think the crux here is, how do we help companies to identify ways to grow their workers and to identify people who have that mindset, the agility, the upskilling mindset to embrace new technologies and changes as they come.
Interesting. Sun, I wanted to ask you, do you see companies reshaping in this new era? Do you think there's going to be more solo practitioners, maybe smaller companies that are able to grow much larger with smaller workforces, maybe very different kinds of firms being created thanks to this technology?
Possibly. But I just wanted to address that question about hiring. And I wanted to share an anecdote about a graduate we had from our School of Accountancy. He wasn't the top of the class, but interestingly, he was quite artistic, and he would organize like little art exhibitions on the side. And the bank actually looked at him in the interview, and they said, you know, you don't have the best grades, but we like that you're kind of well-rounded and you're interesting, and we'll hire you for that reason. And guess what? You know, 10 years later, he's the head of department, and they took a bet. And I think, you know, when you look at hiring practices, which are very AI-centered, which are really about finding the right skill sets in the CV, you're going to miss out a lot of these gems who have that well-roundedness. But speaking to the question about whether or not different kinds of companies are going to emerge, I think indeed when we look at AI, generative AI, there's been a democratization of the access to expert areas. And that's where even small and medium enterprises will be able to scale up in ways that they previously couldn't. But I would say that even the big organizations still have a very good advantage in terms of how they can train people, in terms of how they can put people in complementary skill sets to work together in collaborative teams. So yes, I think both the big organizations will continue to strive and evolve, but there will be an emergence of more organizations of different shapes and sizes where people are going to leverage human AI augmentation to deliver new kinds of services that previously they couldn't.
Yeah, that's interesting. Both those points are really interesting. You know, at least in the US and UK, they often say when somebody gets to sort of the very final rounds of an interview process, very often what someone is trying to do is you've already established that they have all the credentials, and you're just sort of seeing like, do I get along with this person? What are the personalities like? Could I have would I share a beer with that person? You know, AI is not necessarily going to know, are these two people going to get along at the bar? But maybe there's a way to use it that way too. Mata, you were saying backstage you think there is going to be a lot of growth in the small, medium-sized businesses.
Yeah, I think the classic example you'd say is if you were running a small, say, dental practice, right? And you needed someone who was going to be social media manager. You might have been able to do a certain amount with one person. Now with ChatGPT, you can do a lot more, right? And again, if you're a manager of a small and medium business and you needed to acquire skills, now you have this very enthusiastic intern that can go off and do the first pass for you, right? So you can evaluate things. So I think that the throughput that's going to come from the use of more generative AI tools is going to increase the ability for small and medium businesses to grow rapidly. And so I think we're going to see a flowering of that. And the other example also is of finding well-rounded people. That's another example of where a human, like we talk at Indeed about hiring human, because sometimes human can see potential that is not in the text.
Right.
And all of us in our own careers, I've experienced this where a manager tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to do something that I thought I could not do.
Right.
And that's an example where a human can still be very critical to the hiring process, because that is something that LLMs and all forms of AI are fundamentally sort of pattern recognition and predictors, but they can't necessarily do potential that well. And so from my perspective, I see a world in which a small business can expand much more, can try out many more things, and maybe some things don't work out. But then if they do, they will end up hiring and then growing much faster than they would have grown before.
Right. Jess, what are you seeing companies do in terms of this retraining, reskilling part of the equation? Traditionally, a lot of companies have been very bad at that. And in fact, sometimes they acknowledge they're bad at it, and as a result, when roles change or something, they prefer to just eliminate people and then hire new people in because it's actually, they find the reskilling and retraining so hard to accomplish. But what are you seeing innovative firms do, particularly in this region, in that regard?
I think I go back to what I said at the beginning. I'm meeting so many companies that are talking more about gaps in being able to find talent. The right person, I can reskill the skill, but finding the right person that has the understanding of the organization is more. So even particularly in government, I'm seeing this as well. There's this really strong push to how can I bring the skills that we already have and reskill. And I think one thing we haven't chatted about, and we probably don't have a lot of time here, is how do organizations start to make talent, skills, learning, and being able to reskill like an experience of shopping on Lazada. And I think that's a really big thing on enterprises and organizations to provide platforms and I guess pathways that are so easy to interact with that reskilling doesn't feel like I've got to take 10 days to go to a university and do this really deep course, but every day I'm being fed ways of learning digitally, I'm being fed a mentor in another department that can help me, and all of a sudden, just symbiotically within the day of my work, I've reskilled rather than it being a massive commitment. So that could be a topic for another day, but I think reskilling has got to be at the heart of organizations, and I'm seeing it more and more.
Great. Yeah, we are going to have to end it there. We're out of time, but thank you so much, and thank you to all my panelists, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.